We can't love from an empty cup, but maybe we don't need to hold the cup so tightly. Hi, loves. Welcome back to Amy's View Unscripted. I'm Amy, and this is Life in Motion, where we talk about what it really means to live, love, and grow in real time. This week, we're talking about something I think we all wrestle with: how to love people fully without losing ourselves in the process. Because somewhere between protect your peace and be there for everybody, I think a lot of us got a little confused about what healthy love actually looks like. Don't get me wrong, boundaries are beautiful, necessary even. But I also think some of us might have built a few moats where we meant to build bridges. So today, we're exploring how to love without losing your footing, how to stay open without being overrun, and how to show up for others in a way that still feels like you. Now, I say that as someone who has absolutely fallen into both extremes. There was a time where I said yes to everything and everyone because, that's what good people do. Spoiler alert, that's also what exhausted people do. Then I swung the other way. Full main character energy. I was journaling, grounding, manifesting, saying no like it was a spiritual practice. And while some of that was healing, at some point I realized I kind of turned my life into a one-woman show. And listen, I love a solo performance, but relationships, they're more of a duet. Somewhere along the way, self-protection started to look a lot like isolation. And I don't think I'm alone in that. We've all heard the phrases guard your energy, protect your peace, set that boundary, girl. And yes, 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 please do all of that. But also, remember that just because you installed a deadbolt doesn't mean you threw away the key. Because here's the thing, we need people. Not to fix us or complete us, but to remind us who we are when we're loved right. And when it comes to romantic love, that's where things get real. Somewhere along the line, a lot of people started using boundaries and self love as exit strategies. Like the second things get uncomfortable, we're out because protect your peace, right? But love, real love, is supposed to stretch you a little, not to the point of breaking, just enough to grow. If you truly care about someone, sometimes that means pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone for them just a little bit. It means staying for the hard conversation instead of ghosting. It means letting your guard down when your pride wants to build a wall. It means being patient when your partner's trigger bumps up against yours and your first instinct is to shut down. That doesn't mean losing yourself. It just means remembering that compassion and boundaries aren't enemies. They're actually teammates. There's a balance between honoring what you need and showing up for what they need. And yeah, sometimes it's inconvenient, sometimes it's vulnerable, but that's what makes it love. It's chosen effort, not forced. Because what good is all that self work if it never leaves the meditation mat? Love can be where our growth gets tested and proven. And that's why connection matters. It's not just about having someone around, it's about letting what you've built inside of you finally breathe outside. Peace and quiet aren't the same thing. And sometimes the quiet gets a little too comfortable when we stop letting love in. Sure, solitude can be sacred, but connection, that's where peace learns how to move. This is in reach, loving others without losing yourself. Because love doesn't ask us to disappear or dominate, it asks us to dance. We're living in the era of main character energy. Everyone's out here taking bubble baths, lighting candles, and setting boundaries like they're Olympic events. Gold medal and not texting back first? Yeah, we've all been there. And listen, I love that for us. We needed that. Because let's be real, we come from generations where self sacrifice was the gold standard, where you were praised for how much you could endure, not how well you could rest, where people stayed in relationships out of duty, not depth. So, yeah, maybe it makes sense that the pendulum swung hard in the other direction. We went from be nice, be small, be quiet, to I don't owe anyone anything, ever. Honestly, it's wild. My grandma apologized to the coffee pot when it sputtered. I once heard someone say, protect your peace to skip their friend's wedding. And you know what? I don't think either extreme was ever the point. We needed that rebellion phase, the one where we rediscovered our worth, where we learned that saying no could be sacred. We needed the memes that reminded us that boundaries are love. We needed the soft life movement, the main character mindset, the reclaiming of energy that used to belong to everyone else but us. But here's where it gets tricky. Somewhere in the self care revolution, we started confusing healing with hiding. You know what I mean. That moment you tell yourself you're setting boundaries, but really you're just ghosting with better vocabulary. We started cutting people off instead of talking things out. We started calling every disagreement toxic. We turned self love into self protection and boundaries into barricades. And before we knew it, half of us were alone, not because we didn't want love, but because we were terrified of losing ourselves in it. The irony is, most of us built these beautiful new boundaries because of love, because at some point we gave too much, because we poured from that empty cup we talked about earlier, over and over again until it cracked in our hands. And when we finally put it down, we swore we'd never do that again. It's like, I didn't build these walls because I hate people. I built them because I really, really like naps. And that's fair. That's healing. But if we're not careful, the healing becomes armor. And armor can't feel a hug. We needed the pendulum to swing. We really did. We needed to remember that our peace matters, that being everything for everyone will bury you. But now, maybe it's time to let the pendulum settle somewhere in the middle. Because yes, protect your peace, but also let people in. You can't experience love if your boundaries are so tall that no one can see you behind them. And if you built a wall high enough to keep out pain, you'll accidentally keep out joy too. The truth is, we've gotten so good at saying no that we've forgotten how to mean yes. We're like, no, I can't tonight. I'm recharging. Cool, but it's been 8 months and your crystals are fine. And no, I don't mean saying yes to chaos or control, obviously, but I mean saying yes to closeness. To the kind of connection that reminds you why you built boundaries in the first place, so that love could feel safe again. I think we forget that boundaries were never supposed to be the destination. They were supposed to be the doorway, the thing that helps us re enter love with wisdom, not hide from it in fear. And look, I get it. Love can be terrifying, especially when you've worked hard to find peace and stability. There's a moment when you realize that letting someone close means handing them a little bit of your peace and hoping that they hold it gently. That's scary, but it's also what makes it sacred. Because peace wasn't meant to live in isolation, it's meant to move between people, between hearts, between all the little ways we choose each other every day. Love doesn't threaten peace when it's healthy, it expands it. So maybe the question isn't how do I protect my peace? Maybe it's how do I let love be a part of it? We've healed enough to stop swinging between extremes. We've learned how to say no. Now we get to remember how to say yes, wisely, intentionally, and beautifully. Because we didn't heal just to hide, we healed so connection could finally feel like home. We've been sold this idea that it's either boundaries or love. Like we have to pick one. You can either have freedom or closeness, independence or intimacy, your peace or your person. But the truth, that's not how real love works. Love doesn't live in the extremes, it lives in the overlap. Which sounds poetic until you realize sometimes the overlap means sharing a bathroom sink. And I think the reason so many people struggle to find that balance is because most of us grew up watching one version of love, the all in, all consuming, lose yourself kind. The movies made it look magical, and the culture made it feel expected that if it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't real. So when we finally started learning about boundaries and self worth, it felt like this giant exhale. Like finally, we had permission to keep a little something for ourselves. We swung hard towards independence. And for a while, it felt amazing. Until it didn't. Because at some point, we realized that walls don't just keep people out, they keep love out too. And now we're all kind of sitting here trying to figure out how to love again without losing ourselves in the process. It's not either or, it's both. You can have boundaries and connection. You can protect your peace and let someone in. You can honor yourself and show up for the people that you love. The myth of either or comes from fear. Fear that if we give too much, we'll disappear again. Fear that if we let someone close, they'll take advantage of us. Fear that love automatically means loss of time, of energy, and of self. But here's the thing, healthy love doesn't erase you, it amplifies you. It gives you more to bring to the table because you're not pouring from obligation, you're pouring from overflow. When you build a life around balance instead of extremes, you stop asking, what do I have to give up to love you? And you start asking, what can we grow into together? And yeah, I get it. That middle ground takes work. It's easier to just live in absolutes. It's easier to just shut down or to say yes to everything. It's easier to say, it's not you, it's my boundaries, and then exit stage left with your dignity intact. But the easy way rarely leads to love that lasts. Think about it. When you love someone, there will be moments where your boundaries and their needs don't perfectly line up. That's not failure, that's just real life. It's the tension that love is meant to teach us to navigate. Sometimes love looks like saying no, kindly and clearly without guilt. Other times, it looks like saying yes even when it's inconvenient. Not because you're abandoning yourself, but because you choose to stretch for them. That's where intimacy lives, in those moments where you stretch without snapping. The truth is, balance isn't static. It's a living, breathing rhythm, one that shifts depending on the day, the season, the moment. Some days your boundaries need to be firm. And other days, compassion needs to take the lead. The magic happens when you trust yourself enough to know the difference. I once heard someone say, if it's costing you your peace, it's too expensive. And I get the sentiment, but here's my take. Sometimes peace costs a conversation. Sometimes it costs an apology. Sometimes it costs a moment of discomfort because love asked you to grow. That's not losing peace, that's investing in it. Because long-term peace doesn't come from avoiding friction, it comes from learning how to move through it with grace. It's not about never being triggered, it's about knowing how to come back to the center together. That's what the myth of either or gets wrong. It tells us that love and boundaries exist on opposite sides of a line. But in reality, they're holding hands. One protects, the other connects. One says, "This is where I stand." The other says, "And here is my hand." And sometimes that balance gets tested in real time. Because love isn't always two people moving in perfect sync. Sometimes one of you needs to stretch while the other one needs to stay grounded. You've probably felt it before. One partner says, "I need you to meet me here." The other says, "I can't right now. I need to catch my breath." And suddenly, you're both looking at the same moment from opposite sides of the bridge. One reaching forward, one holding still. That's not failure. That's real partnership. The key is remembering that both things can be true at once. Love doesn't demand that we move at the same speed. It just asks that we keep facing the same direction. Sometimes stretching looks like patience. Sometimes grounding looks like grace. And when both people can hold space for that dance, when one reaches while the other regroups, that's when balance stops being a theory and starts being lived. Because the goal isn't perfect harmony all the time. It's emotional agility. It's knowing when to lean in and when to lean back without turning away. Boundaries and love were never meant to compete. They're meant to collaborate. One gives shape, the other gives heartbeat. One says, "Here's what I need." The other says, "And here's how I'll try." So no, it's not about choosing between yourself and your relationship. It's about learning how to hold both with equal respect, yourself and the person you love. And that's where the peace is. Not in the quiet, not in the control, but the courage to live in the middle. You ever notice how every era of self growth comes with a catchphrase? First, it was good vibes only, then protect your peace. And now we're deep in our if it costs my energy, it's too expensive era. And listen, I get it. I've said that line myself, probably on a Tuesday, probably while wearing a face mask and sipping tea. Peace is priceless. But sometimes the bill we think we're avoiding is actually just growth knocking at the door. Comfort zones are sneaky like that. They'll show up wearing sweatpants, offering snacks, and whispering, "You're just honoring your limits." Meanwhile, they've quietly turned your boundaries into bubble wrap. Look, I love my comfort zone. It's got snacks, it's got soft lighting, it's basically an emotional Airbnb. But at some point, even the best Airbnb starts charging you for late checkout. Your comfort zone has a purpose. It's home base. It's where you rest, reset, and recharge. But it was never meant to be your whole world. Because if you spend too long protecting your peace, you start protecting it from the very thing that would expand it. When we say, "I'm protecting my peace," what we often mean is, "I'm avoiding conflict." And sometimes that's wise. Sometimes silence is peace, but other times, silence is just fear wearing a cozy sweater. Love isn't meant to live inside the lines of our comfort, it's meant to redraw them gently, patiently, together. Every deep relationship you've ever had, romantic, friendship, family, has probably asked you to grow in ways you didn't expect. Maybe it asked you to soften where you'd gone rigid. Maybe it asked you to listen longer than felt easy. Maybe it asked you to trust again when part of you swore you never would. That's not the universe punishing you, that's love refining you. And yet, the second things start to stretch us, we panic. We tell ourselves, this doesn't feel peaceful, it must be wrong. But sometimes that tightness in your chest isn't anxiety, but expansion. Peace isn't always still. Sometimes peace is movement, the kind that happens when you finally stop running and start reaching. You can't build deep love inside your comfort zone. You can't evolve inside a cage you built yourself. At some point, we all have to ask, am I safe or am I stuck? Because there is a difference. Safety restores you, stagnancy sedates you. And the wild part is, both can feel the same for a while, calm, predictable, easy, but only one leads to growth. Comfort zones whisper, you're fine right here. Love whispers back, you could be even more out there. That's why real partnership sometimes feels like a gentle nudge forward. One day you're convinced you've reached peak healing, and then your partner leaves their socks on the floor, and suddenly you discover a whole new level of emotional regulation. That's growth, baby. Love will test the strength of your boundaries and the flexibility of your patience, often at the same time. And honestly, that's part of the beauty, because love isn't meant to make you smaller. It's meant to remind you how big your heart can get when it's safe to open. We were never meant to stay small in the name of safety. We were meant to keep expanding in the name of love. So, yeah, protect your peace, take your bubble baths. But remember, peace isn't a hiding place, it's a home base. And homes are meant to be left and returned to, not lived in forever. And sometimes the most peaceful thing you can do is move. Quick segue. Up next, we're talking about the physiology of empathy. Welcome to biology, but make it sexy. Because apparently, love isn't just in your heart, it's in your nervous system. See, science has this thing called mirror neurons, little bundles of brain cells that light up when you see someone else feeling something. It's like emotional Wi Fi. Someone laughs, you laugh. Someone cries, you tear up. Someone's mad, and suddenly you're mad too, even if you were perfectly fine 5 seconds ago. Your brain's basically saying, oh, we're doing sadness now? Cool, let me get my tissues. And that's not weakness, that's wiring. We're built to connect. Empathy isn't learned behavior, it's biology. That's why when your person walks in the door after a long day, you instantly feel their mood. You can sense the tension before a single word ever leaves their mouth. Or when they start laughing at something on their phone and you automatically start laughing too, even though you have zero idea what's funny. That's empathy in action, a literal nervous system sync up. Romance, but make it neuroscience. There's actually a term for this in psychology: co-regulation. It's the idea that our nervous systems are in constant conversation. When someone you love exhales, your body notices. When they soften, you do too. It's not just metaphorical, it's measurable. You can think of it like emotional jazz. Two nervous systems riffing off of each other, trying to find the same rhythm. Of course, sometimes it can sound less like jazz and more like toddlers with tambourines. Because let's be honest, emotional syncing isn't always graceful. Because when one of you is stressed, it's easy for the other to get swept right up in it. That's not codependency. That's welcome to having a pulse. The trick isn't to stop feeling each other, it's to stay grounded enough that you can help each other come back down. That's empathy with boundaries. Because, yeah, you can catch someone's energy, but you can also set it. You can walk into a room with calm and make people breathe easier without ever saying a word. You've done it before. That moment when someone says, I don't know why, but I feel calmer around you. And if you've ever felt that deep sense of peace lying next to someone, when the world quiets down and your breathing falls into the same rhythm, that's your nervous system saying, we're good, we're safe here. It's wild, right? The body keeps score, sure, but it also keeps rhythm. Now, there is a shadow side to this too, because when we're constantly picking up on other people's energy, it's easy to start absorbing what was never ours to carry. That's where compassion fatigue and emotional burnout can sneak in. Your body's basically saying, hey, I love that you care so much, but could we not carry 12 people's cortisol levels at once? That's why self awareness is so important. Because empathy isn't about matching someone's energy, it's about meeting it. You can be a calm anchor without diving into the storm. I like to think of it this way. Empathy says, I can feel with you. Codependency says, I can only feel if you're okay. One connects, the other collapses. And here's where it gets kind of beautiful. Once you realize your body's built for connection, you stop treating empathy like a liability and start treating it like a superpower. Because it is. You can sense things that data can't measure: tone shifts, micro expressions, the pause someone takes before pretending they're fine. That's your intuition. And it's a deeply human kind of intelligence because we all crave to be seen and soothed. It's not a sign of weakness, but it's how we're wired to survive. No one heals in isolation. We're pack animals with feelings and coffee addictions. The goal isn't to shut that sensitivity down, it's to wield it wisely, to know when to soften, when to steady, when to say, hey, I can hold space for you, but I still have to stay centered. Because empathy without boundaries will burn you out. But empathy with boundaries, that's the sweet spot. It's not about losing yourself in someone else's storm. It's about learning how to dance in the rain without drowning. And honestly, how romantic is that? Two nervous systems just vibing responsibly. Because empathy doesn't mean absorbing someone else's pain. It means letting your presence remind them of peace. It's not I'll hurt with you until it's fixed. It's you're not alone while you find your way back. So, yeah, biology can be sexy because it's proof that love isn't just a feeling, it's a full body experience. It's your neurons and hormones and heartbeat all saying, I see you and I'm here. Because at the end of the day, empathy is about moving together, steady, safe, and side by side. Here's the thing about love: it's not supposed to drain you, but yeah, it'll stretch you. And caring deeply doesn't have to mean carrying everything. We live in a culture obsessed with extremes. Either you're giving until you're hollow, Or you've built a spiritual fortress guarded by candles and do not disturb energy. But real love lives in the middle. It's the sweet spot where care and boundaries stop fighting and start flirting. Think of it like learning to dance again after a few stubbed toes. You don't stop dancing, you just stop doing the Macarena with your emotions. Care without collapse starts with the simplest truth: you can't pour from an empty cup, but you also can't hoard your water like it's the emotional apocalypse. So you learn to refill and release over and over again. That's the quiet kind of love. The kind that doesn't need grand gestures or matching Instagram captions. It's in the everyday choices: listening instead of fixing, pausing instead of reacting, and loving without keeping score. Care without collapse is the moment you say, I can hold you, but I won't lose me. It's the art of staying steady while still being soft. It's the deep breath that comes before the honest talk, the patience that doesn't come with a side of resentment. And look, none of us get this perfect. You're going to overgive sometimes. You're going to pull back too far sometimes. That's okay. It's all part of the choreography. We learn the rhythm by stepping on each other's toes and then saying, okay, maybe not that move again. So care deeply, set boundaries, and for the love of sanity, stop treating protecting your peace like a witness protection program. That's how you love without losing yourself. That's how you stay in reach. So here we are, full circle. We started with cups and candles and conversations about boundaries, and somehow we've landed in the middle of empathy, love, and late checkout metaphors. Classic us. But really, this whole thing, every part of it, has been about one truth: we are built for connection. Not the kind that drains you or defines you, even, but the kind that reminds you of who you are when you're seen clearly, reminds you that peace isn't meant to be guarded like a secret, reminds you that love, when it's healthy, doesn't require you to vanish. It invites you to expand. I think we forget how sacred that is in a world that rewards isolation disguised as independence. We're told that needing people makes us weak, that compromise means that we're lost, and that vulnerability is a liability. But honestly, I think the real power move is knowing when to reach, because reaching takes courage. It's easy to be above it. It's easy to ghost, to scroll, to sit in the safety of your own silence and call it self-respect. But connection, real, holy connection, takes heart, and it takes showing up. It takes stretching when you'd rather stay still, and grounding when you'd rather run. This isn't a prescription, it's a permission slip. Permission to love big and stay whole, to take care of yourself and still care about others, to keep your boundaries and your softness intact at the same time. The world needs your empathy, your laughter, your I see you, I get it kind of energy. We need people who care without collapsing, who show up without self-erasing, and who understand that strength isn't just about walls, it's about roots. And you, my friend, have them. You've built the peace. You've done the healing. Now you get to live it out loud, in color, with the people who make your soul feel like home. So go ahead and love. Wildly, wisely, wholeheartedly. Hold the cup, but not too tightly. Keep the door locked when you need to, but don't forget you've still got the key. Let love stretch you in ways that make you proud, not smaller. We didn't heal just to hide. We healed so we could hold. And that's the larger echo of it all. That healing isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of better love. So, yeah, keep your boundaries, keep your peace, keep your sense of humor while you're at it, but also keep reaching. Because loving others without losing yourself, that's not the exception. That's the evolution. All right, your turn. I want to hear from you. What does loving without losing yourself look like in your world? Or maybe, what's one boundary you're learning to hold with love? Drop it in the comments. You never know who your story might help or who's nodding along on the other side of the screen. And if this episode spoke to you, give it a like, share it with someone who might need a little reminder that self-love and real love can actually coexist. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for being here, for showing up, for choosing growth, and for being part of this community that's learning how to love better, starting with ourselves. And I'll see you soon. Bye for now. I don't know why I just shook so much. Give me sexy.